What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here with your Packers Daily Chat for Cheesehead TV. Wherever you are on the internet, we're devoted to Green Bay Packers fans worldwide. That's why we go on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you are. That's where we want to be. Twitter, what's up? Good to see everybody on a Monday afternoon. The live chat already kicking off. Good to see everybody here. Interesting question. Start us off, with a 10-6 season with no playoffs be considered a good first outing for Matt LaFleur? I think so. I mean, if they miss the playoffs at 10-6, I think that's a pretty decent inaugural season from a new head coach who takes over a team that has missed out on the playoffs and not had a winning season the last 2 years. I think people would obviously be disappointed not missing the playoffs, but a winning season, it's a good first step. Now, all of that said, there's much time between now and whatever record Matt LaFleur ends up compiling in 2019. But I tend to think that, a 10-6 season would be a promising start for a young coach, no doubt. Rams or Pats? David gets right down to it. Brass tacks here, Super Bowl week. Man, it's hard to bet against the Patriots, isn't it? I'll be pulling for the Rams, though. That's all I know. Does Drake Ryan come back? Good question. It's interesting to see the official website of the Green Bay Packers had a big feature on him today. He is slated to be a free agent in 2019. That injury sure sets him back. It's hard to get a handle on any idea about any guy who's coming off an injury, whether it's him, Mo Wilkerson, et cetera, without being privy to the medical information. I would think the chances are probably not great, is what I would say. Obviously, familiarity. Maybe they bring him back on a cheap one-year deal, but you're getting better or you're getting worse. A year away, a year off. Their second season into a new defense that he has pretty much, essentially, not played in. I think they would leave their options open, but probably look to improve there. How much longer will the Pro Bowl include a game? Who cares? I mean, hey, if you watched the Pro Bowl, great. If you didn't, fine. I didn't, and I feel fine having not. But I think the Pro Bowl can continue to have the game aspect of it as long as the ratings are there. It still doubles the Stanley Cup Finals in the television ratings. So, as long as that's happening, the NFL will continue to hold it. Still no special teams coach. We're doomed, right? No, they're not. The title of this here video today, the chat, I said nowhere to go but up on special teams, right? I mean, obviously it's not that simple, but I do find it interesting, some of my former colleagues there in the press hemming and hawing and gnashing of teeth about the fact that they missed out on Rizzi, and clearly that means that, everything's about to crash and burn on special teams. Well, I think we just lived through crash and burn on special teams for the last, decade, essentially. Now, that's not to say that you can throw anybody in there and expect things to get better, but I'm really not sensing this huge sense of doom and gloom around the special teams just because they may end up with a young junior-like prospect of a coach trying to coordinate that aspect of things. Now, if they get a retread and someone who has shown themselves to be not up to snuff, then maybe we can start talking. But as of right now, I'm really not concerned about it. I mean, like I said, I think LaFleur's got a good handle on what he wants. When he, was asked in his introductory press conference, wanting controlled aggression, penalty-free aggression, I think he's got a good idea, and not to put themselves in bad situations on special teams. It's got to be complimentary, etc. Those are fine, and I think he knows what he wants. Let's see him make the hire first before we start. And I'm not saying you, the commenter here, are doing this, but before we start dooming and glooming it, let's see who he hires. McAdoo for special teams. There you go. Cutting Tramon Williams makes sense cap-wise. Take his money and re-sign Breeland. I don't know if I agree with that one, DeMario. I understand trying to save a few bucks on the cap, but there are better ways to do it. I think he was definitely, obviously, a team player. While not a dynamic presence at safety, he certainly really stabilized things back there. And I still think he serves some purpose as far as playing meaningful snaps at corner. Again, he's not Revis in his prime, but for what they're paying him, and in conjunction with not only his experience, but his locker room presence, I think you can do better than cutting Tramon Williams to save money. Fant or Hockerson? Matthew, this will be the kind of discussion, I think, all the way up through the draft. I really don't think you can go wrong with either one. Obviously, I think Hockerson is a little bit better of a prospect, and I wouldn't mind seeing him in green and gold, but really either one I'm fine with. Like, can we just get them a tight end finally in the draft, please? I wish people would stop committing to people in free agency. Well, Joey, you only got till March 13th, and then maybe a little after, and then free agency will have come and gone. But until then, that's what people are going to do. Yo, Nags, has a player ever been upset at a question you asked while you were on the beat? Not to my face, but they've certainly blocked me on Twitter. So, but no. It's funny, my youngest daughter, Olive, is obsessed with a question that I asked Aaron Rodgers last year. It was last summer, actually, during training camp, where she says he's staring daggers at me while I ask it. And I tried to explain to her that's just kind of his gaze and how he sets when he looks at someone who's questioning him to determine whether the question is a stupid one or not. But he was actually very gracious in his answer. It was about pass protection. He mentioned Joe Philbin and bringing in a new system, etc. But no, I've never had someone be upset with something I asked. Thoughts on Schefter telling LaFleur he got the job? Yeah, I thought that was an interesting little tidbit. Our friends over there at Power Sweep kind of highlighted it this morning, saying that Schefter, I believe he was on a podcast, and he was talking about how he called all the people that were in the running, reportedly, and each one of them had been eliminated, according to the Packers. The Packers had called them and said, thanks, but no thanks. And essentially then he called LaFleur, I guess, last, and said, have you gotten that call? And he said, no. But he's like, well, they've eliminated everybody else. Congratulations, you're the head coach. I'm sure it's not quite that simple and clean, but I have no doubt that something akin to that happened. It does throw into light LaFleur getting that call while his wife was driving to pick up their kids at work. But yeah, I'm not surprised that Schefter's done that probably in the past and probably will do again in the future. How about taking both tight ends from Iowa? Too radical? Well, Mike, I think you'd have to use probably both first-round picks to do it. And while I no doubt would love the influx of talent at the tight end position, I think that'd be a bit irresponsible. But crazier things have happened. Beasley in the slot would be huge. Thoughts? Stefano, I've gotten a lot of Cole Beasley questions here today, and I got some last week after his Twitter interactions with Donald Driver. I would welcome it with open arms. I think he would be an excellent addition. I've seen people say they don't need him, or they've got plenty of talent at wide receiver already, blah, 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 blah. I think he would offer something that they don't have, a real quick twitch operator there at the slot. And I do think, they've got, I do believe they have talent at wide receiver. I think whether it's MVS, EQ, or Jake Kumerow, any of those young guys could come up and help them in that regard. But I do think Beasley is a different cat athletically, and I think he would help them move the chains, so to speak. Are you excited about next year? That's a really open-ended question. I'm cautiously optimistic. How's that? Pettin got his guy back with Mike Smith. Funny stories about him and collision low crossers. Yes, Nick, I have mentioned that book often. I will mention it again here. If you haven't read Collision Low Crossers, do so. It is a great look inside the world of pro football. It covers the Jets, but it really, there's a lot of insights into how the NFL operates at the team level. And yes, there are many stories about Mike Pettin and Mike Smith that you will enjoy as a Packers fan. Should we go after D Ford? Good question, Chris. I would. Let's see if he hits the market first, because I have to think Kansas City will make it a priority to ensure that he doesn't hit the market. But if he does indeed become a free agent, I think that's a phone call the Packers should make, yes. What about Kumerow at slot, not Beasley? Chris, I think Kumerow would be great. I think Beasley is probably a tad bit better of a route runner at this point, but that doesn't mean that Kumerow can't improve. But I think Beasley is a better fit as a slot guy. But that's not to diminish Kumerow or that he can't get better and grow into that kind of role. But I think Beasley needs just little bit better of an offense to showcase what he can do. And I think LaFleur could help him open that up. Devin, going the all caps route to make sure I see this question. What are the absolute needs through the draft? Absolute needs. Well, only a Sith deals in absolutes, as every nerd knows. But I would say they have to come out of this draft with an edge player, with some kind of reinforcements along the offensive line, and probably a safety. Those, to me, are the big three absolute must-haves. That's just me. Your mileage may vary. Aaron, do you think that Kyler Fackrell needs another breakout season so he can prove that last season was no fluke? Well, I mean, it would be nice. One just has to look at where a lot of those sacks were compiled. When you look at his 10.5 sacks, that's all great. But, 6 of those came in 2 games, 3 apiece between the Seahawks game and the Bills game. I think he played well, but much better above his head. Certainly, it prompted me to give a big-time apology on Packer transplants in the middle of the season, because I had written him off. But, I think you can't count on him going into 2019. You have to continue to improve and replenish, so to speak, the talent level at edge. But I think he's absolutely can be part of the puzzle. I think he can definitely be counted on to continue to play the level we saw in 2018. But he's certainly not the answer by any means. Let's head over to Twitter, see what's going on in the old tweet machine, see what people have to say, including Tyler, who starts us off with, I love looking at mock drafts just like the next person, but they're meaningless until free agency is over, in my opinion. What players do you see getting tagged, and which do you see hitting the open market? Wouldn't mind giving Earl Thomas and KJ Wright phone calls. Well, Tyler, there's a lot to unpack there. I'll just start with, I hate to break this to you, a little news flash for you, but mock drafts aren't only useless and meaningless prior to free agency, they're also mostly useless and meaningless after free agency. Now, all that said, they're really just a conversation starter. I don't have a problem with the mock drafts. I make fun of the draft industrial complex because it's blown up into this huge kind of industry now where, we do consume mock drafts and scouting reports and things of that nature from now, basically, until late April, which to me is a bit ridiculous, as you're suggesting here. But look, it's great conversation fodder, and that's really all it is, and that's fine with me. I mean, that's cool. I'm not going to read every single one, but I like dipping in now and then, and that's, this time of year, why not, right? As for your other question, who do I see getting tagged? I mean, the list is exhaustive, really, and it's probably too long to go into here. As for Earl Thomas and KJ Wright, I'd be shocked if they gave KJ Wright a phone call. I think Earl Thomas makes a ton of sense, but I think he's destined to play in Dallas. I think everything we saw last year kind of leads you to the conclusion that he'll be a Cowboy in 2019. Now, maybe not. You never know in the NFL, but that sure seems to be where things are pointed. What is it with the Le'Veon Bell obsession amongst Packer fans? Too expensive with too many holes to fill. Hey, man, I couldn't agree more. I think my buddy there at PackersNews.com, Pete Doherty, is kind of fanning those flames. I think he's crazy. I think people who say that they should sign Bell are crazy. But again, it's that time of the offseason, right? What else are we going to talk about? We got to talk about things like, should they sign Le'Veon Bell? But I'm with you. I think that money could be much better spent, much better allocated in the cap at a number of other positions rather than paying him what seems to be an insane amount of money for a running back. Yes, get Aaron Rodgers some help, get him a running game. He's got a two-headed monster already. Could they augment the talent they already have on hand? Absolutely. Do they need to go out and spend $1 billion on Le'Veon Bell to do so? Absolutely not. In fact, I think it'd be kind of irresponsible. I know I'm probably overreacting, but is LaFleur hiring almost all his coaches out of the Shanahan tree a little concerning? It would be good to get some different ideas in there. You mean like Hackett? Hackett's not out of the Shanahan tree. I would calm down on, worrying about it in mid-January, and yes, you are overreacting. Do you think that the supposed unattractiveness that Green Bay or Wisconsin has for the players is one of the reasons for the low activity of Ted Thompson in free agency? Maybe he wouldn't want to overpay to attract players. Eduardo, there's some merit to that, I think. Mostly, guys are going to follow the money. Yes, Green Bay, for some guys, probably isn't the attractive destination that maybe in a bigger urban environment might be. But, especially if they're younger and wanting to get out on the town, etc. But for the most part, guys follow the money. And Ted showed, for the most part, that if it was a guy that he thought was worth it, he was going to pay. Whether it was Ryan Pickett, Charles Woodson, etc., or Julius Peppers. But for the most part, I think some of that gets overblown by both the media and fans. Like I said, if you're willing to pay, guys are going to follow the money. Now, all that said, are there instances where guys probably don't want to go to Green Bay? Yeah, sure. I would encourage you to read Michael Cohen's piece on Russ Ball that he did for the Journal-Sentinel, I believe 2 years ago. I think it was 2 parts, and it was excellent. And in there, he talks with agents who have had pitches from Ball about, take a little less, come play with Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is really the thing that has driven the desire and or kind of compunction to lowball guys, so to speak, or try to get them out on the cheap. I mean, everyone is kind of pointing to, Wisconsin's not an attractive free agent destination. I think it's much more a philosophical kind of drive from Thompson and Ball, or it had been, into, look, we're going to try and get these guys with the sense of, come play with Aaron Rodgers, come compete for championships, and take a little less. Now, obviously, the bloom is off that rose at this point after the last 2 years. But that's certainly an acknowledged, at least on the outside, way of doing business in Green Bay for the last 5-6 years. I got a sick flu, never had one before, but should I make one of those Wisconsin old fashions over here in Germany? You think that will help? No question. All right, let's head back to the live chat. Cole here in Wisconsin, what kind of innovation are you looking for with the new offense? I spoke on this a little bit before. I don't think you're going to see a ton of quote-unquote innovation in the sense that he's going to set the league on fire doing stuff that no one's ever seen before, but I do think we'll see lots of stuff that we haven't seen in Green Bay in a long time. And I do like his description of, what was it, deceptive, I can't remember what the phrase was now, deceptive complexity or whatever he said. I think you'll see a lot of the same concepts out of lots of different formations and personnel groups, which is funny because that's kind of how Holmgren went about it. It is how McCarthy used to go about it until he got all up in the 3 wide receiver sets. But I think it's interesting because I think you'll see a lot of stuff out of based off the zone scheme in the run game, like he's talked about, and you've seen a lot of that from Shanahan. But I do think some of the best coaches, and you've seen Sean McVay do this year, where he started off, it was all 3 wide receiver. I mean, almost 97% 3 wide receiver sets for the most part of the year. But then after Cooper Kupp went down and they picked up C.J. Anderson, things really morphed. And they went to a lot more 2 tight end stuff. And they've done that now throughout the playoffs really effectively. And they've really kind of shifted their offensive philosophy. And I think that's what you'll see from LaFleur. Depending on what he has personnel-wise, that's what you saw from him in Tennessee. Especially after Delaney Walker went down in week 1. I think that's what you want from your coach. You want a guy who's going to lean into what he has on hand rather than what we saw from McCarthy, especially towards the end of his tenure, which was trying to make his system work even though he maybe didn't have the horses to run. Those are just my 2 cents. Does Goot take any heat for the essential waste of a draft pick on Cole Madison? That's a little rough for me. I mean, you're welcome to give him heat if you wish, but it's hard to know that a guy is going to up and quit, as Cole Madison seems to have. That's really hard, and especially when you connect it to the events that seemingly led to him quitting. I have a real hard time putting that on Gutekunst. Illusion of complexity. Thank you, Brett. Landon Collins, if he hits the market, they should absolutely make that call. I would love to see him in Pettine's defense. He would instantly, obviously, be the best safety on the roster, and he would bring a real physical presence. This really rangy guy. I mean, that's, yes, number 1. That's much more realistic to me than Earl Thomas. That's just me. No comp picks this year? That's right, Nick. That's part of the deal when you start signing guys in free agency. You lose guys, you gain guys, but then you get no comp picks. So no comp picks for the Packers this year. Next, do you think this offseason is going to quite determine the long-term future of the Packers? No, I mean, it will set up Gutekunst's tenure. There's no doubt about that. This is the offseason where he puts his stamp on the roster. Long-term for the Packers, so to speak, I think it could definitely determine how Mark Murphy's tenure goes the rest of the way. Now, whether he's in town much longer or not, but I don't think it's the question of how 2019 goes will determine the fate of the franchise. I think the fate of the franchise is set up pretty well. Now that said, are they on the precipice of another long downturn? That certainly would affect things, but the franchise will still be viable. But as far as what their fortunes will be on the team, on the field, and where we are as far as do they bounce back and become perennial contenders again, or are they in for a long, dark winter? Only time will tell. I can't tell you one way or the other, but I will say I'm nervous about it. As someone who lived through the 70s and 80s, yeah, I'm nervous about it. Just being honest. I keep hearing rumors of Barr to Green Bay. Wouldn't that be a little awkward? Mike, whatever rumors you're hearing are probably internet-driven, and I think you can summarily dismiss them. That's not to say they wouldn't be interested, but I'd be surprised if they had already made some kind of overture prior to free agency, as A, it would be illegal, and B, as far as the rules go, and B, as you're talking about, it would be a bit awkward to say to Aaron Rodgers, guess who's coming on board? I think you can safely dismiss that. Should the Packers re-sign Morgan Burnett? I would tend to think not. He's not, it wouldn't be a familiar defense, although it's based in 3-4 principles. He is a guy they would primarily probably use down in the box, which is what they have a lot of. What they need is a rangy guy who can play center field. That's not Morgan Burnett, especially not anymore. So I would tend to pass on that. Murphy's mom should make the calls during free agency. That's phenomenal. If we could get Clowney, is it even worth it? Let's also pretend D Ford doesn't get tagged. Is he the better get? I tell you what, I would probably lean towards D Ford over Clowney, if only because I think you can probably get Ford for a little bit less than you would Clowney, although both of them I think are going to get big-time deals if they both hit the market. But look, I always say it, I'll keep saying it until we hit actual free agency and the tags are set. There's a good chance neither one of those guys hits the market. In fact, I think the chances of them getting tagged and/or re-signed are probably much better than either one of those guys seeing free agency. What are the chances they bring back Cobb due to his relationship with Rodgers? Very minimal. I think they'll let him hit free agency and say if he doesn't like what he sees out there, if he doesn't get a deal, an offer along the lines of what he's hoping, maybe they welcome him back on a team-friendly deal. But look, they've got a lot of young talent at that position. Now, true, not specifically in the slot role, but with the guys they have, they need to get those guys on the field. And to bring him back feels like if they moved on from Jordy when they did because of how they did, sure feels like the next step is to move on from Randall Cobb. They should just hire Banky for special teams coach and be done with it. Mike, I like the way you think. We should move Josh Jackson to free safety. Yeah, I know. A lot of people have commented on that. A lot of people see that move. Maybe it's one they make. But again, I don't know. I don't see him as a ranging free safety type. Maybe he could play safety. Eyes towards the quarterback, probably be a little better, but I don't know. I don't think that's the answer. If the Pack drafts Noah Fant and keeps Jimmy Graham, who will be the starter? Starter is a misnomer at this point. I think a lot of it depends on game plan, and does it really matter who is in the huddle on the very first play? Because they're probably going to rotate. Essentially, I think Graham would be the one who would be labeled the starter because of seniority, but ultimately, in a league where you're subbing guys in and out, really the quarterback and the 5 offensive linemen are the really only ones who have true starter status because you mix everything up so much. So I don't think it really matters. Traditionally, though, and historically, most rookie tight ends don't make a very big impact, no matter how good they are. So I still think you'd see a lot of Graham. Packers are universally irrelevant since Favre left and McCarthy destroyed the team. Well, that's dumb. You're best suited watching old Tom and Jerry cartoons. I like Tom and Jerry. It's really good. What's crazy about Tom and Jerry is how violent some of those were. It's kind of the same thing with old Looney Tunes. They're so violent. I mean, I love them. I mean, there is a Looney Tunes cartoon where Bugs Bunny is literally like playing piano and someone's coughing and can't stop coughing, so he gets out a gun and shoots the guy coughing, which, no jury would convict. But I just find that funny. But yeah, Favre left, McCarthy destroyed the team. That's adorable. As if every single dude wasn't open except for the guy he threw to in Favre's last pass. But yeah, McCarthy destroyed the team. Okay, whatever there, Jim. Banky and J.K. Scott equals nuclear weapon. Will we bring back Tramon Williams? I think he'd be great for young players. I think he'll be back. We'll see how they want to go about opening up salary cap space, but I don't think he's getting paid an exorbitant amount. I think they have a lot of contracts coming off the books already. I think you at least bring him into camp, let him compete, but we'll see. Saffold will be a beast at right guard. Again, Christian, that's another guy who I think would be certainly compelling if he hits the market, but I'll be surprised if he actually hits the market. I love that I can be going along in a, Packers chat, and then I get a random, nothing happens in The Last Jedi. I mean, I don't disagree, but it's just kind of funny. When will be the next time we hear from Packer Brass? You may hear from Packer Brass on Packer Transplants on Wednesday. How's that for a tease? Stay tuned. I can't believe we're 0-4 against Detroit in the last 2 years. That's embarrassing. Timmy, yes? Yes, it is. It's one of the reasons I thought Mark Murphy should have fired Joe Philbin the night after that Detroit Lions game, so he could have come out in front of people on Monday morning and said, this is on me, the embarrassment you feel is on me, the buck stops with me, I'm going to get this right, etc. But no, he let Philbin go out there and take the slings and arrows, which I thought was ridiculous. And then when he finally does show up, it's because he's hired a new coach, and then he talks for an hour about what a great process it was. That'll never stop irking me. Mike McCarthy, special teams coach. It's Zook, isn't it? Yes. Ron Zook will be on Packer Transplants. No. I think the offensive line depth is a bigger need than some positions I've been hearing about. If Rodgers goes down, it's a wrap. Patrick, I've been saying it pretty much since mid-season. A lot of what they wanted to do this year was ruined because of the fact that they couldn't block things up, especially in play action. The interior was a major problem. I do think I like Lane Taylor for a bounce back. He definitely had a down year, but I think he was dealing with a lot injury-wise that probably led and contributed to his poor performances in spots. Right guard is an issue, and it's something they not only need a starter, but like you said, they need some depth there. I think there's no question the interior has to be taken care of. When it comes to Bulaga, I think they've got 1 year left on his deal. They're a better team when he's on the field than without him. I don't think replacing him will be all that easy. I definitely go into the year, I would think, with him as your right tackle, but you plan for the future without him starting in 2020. All right, everybody, I'm going to have to jump. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours. Thank you so much for making Cheesehead TV part of your Packers routine. Like I said, we got a special Packer Transplants coming up on Wednesday. Anything could happen. Anyone could stop by. We'll see. But make sure you're, subscribe to us on YouTube so you don't miss it. Or like us on Facebook. Tell your friends about us. Join our Patreon. $5 a month to support everything we do. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll talk to you guys on Wednesday. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good night.